Welcome in, guys, to the first episode of this new bi-weekly show with me and Mookie Alexander, State of the Hawks. So this will be me and Mookie's opportunity every 2 weeks to get together. We'll chop up kind of where the Seahawks are. We'll take a big picture deep dive of this team, go through a couple other things, spotlights, maybe some previews of some games, talk about past games. Definitely get your guys' feedback and your opinions on where the team's at, and maybe a few games along the way as we go through this to give you guys some really engaging content. But Mookie, how you been, man?
I've been good. It's a holiday, whether you spell it with a U or not. When Labor Day comes around, it's my favorite holiday because it means football is around the corner. Nothing to do with what the meaning of Labor Day. I just see football on my screen, wall to wall, very soon. Like, enjoy the first college weekend. I've been even caught up on CFL highlights. Seahawks legend Kenny Lawler caught what would have been the game-winning touchdown right before we came on air, and then Toronto ended up kicking a winning field goal. So, yeah, now it's time for the NFL, and it's time for our Seahawks to get into action this Sunday. I cannot wait for that game. I'm getting goosebumps, and I'm getting antsy just thinking about it.
Yeah, I can't wait either, Mookie, and we'll get into it right after this. So before, guys, we get into the content that we're going to deliver for you guys today, one quick thing I got to ask, please like and subscribe to the channel. My channel is growing rapidly at a ridiculous pace, and it's all attributed to you guys and coming over from where you've been before and seeing my content. So remember to like and subscribe to the video, share it with any fellow Seahawk fans and such. And to find that information, guys, it's right there. I'll take the banner off because it cut it off, but you can follow me on YouTube at the Hawks Eye Podcast with Bryce Coots. You can follow me on X at the Seahawks Eye, and as well on Spotify now at the Hawks Eye Podcast with Bryce Coots. I'm up on Spotify. I will be on iHeart later this week, as well as Apple Podcasts. So wherever you guys get your podcasts, you'll be able to find this show. So, Mookie, with that being said, let's dive into kind of this deep dive picture of this team and where they're kind of at. Obviously, there was some news today that, just broke recently at practice, but, Sataoa Laumea no longer on the Seattle Seahawks.
No, DeAnthony Bell, as expected, goes to the practice squad. So that's also a good endorsement for Ty Okada to make the active roster over him. I mean, they both made it, but to cut Bell as a veteran, or veteran-ish, because he's not been in the league that long, put him on the practice squad, somebody had to go, and it's Laumea. So obviously, we thought, okay, maybe Lomea's got a place on the active roster as recently as about a month ago when he was doing some reps in training camp in place of Christian Haynes, to now he's off the team. Now he's off the practice squad. I don't know if he's going to be on that ghost roster where they just bring him back in when they need to, but it might be best for a clean break. I feel like schematically, what Kubiak and Benton want to run does not fit Laumea, because let's face it, most of Laumea's highlights as a rookie involved things that we're probably not going to see a whole lot of in Kubiak's offense. So, like, GT counter, my goodness, Laumea is a star of that, but you can't actually run that every play. And then the pass protection was just a nightmare last season and into this preseason. So it just didn't work out. He's a 6th-round pick. Maybe he can find a landing spot elsewhere, but as you said, I think last week and even today, it was kind of a surprise to even see Laumea make the practice squad to begin with, and now he's off the team.
Yeah, I know when they made the initial 53 and I didn't see him on there, I was like, okay, I think they've made a clean cut. Then he showed up on the practice squad, and I was honestly surprised. I was on the 12 Talk pod yesterday, and I made a very outlandish, bold statement about Laumea's pass blocking this preseason. I said he was a door frame without a door, and that's kind of how I felt watching him. And I went back and rewatched the All-22 to make sure my eyes didn't deceive me, and it truly was the case. He looked like he took a massive step back, Mookie, in a lot of ways this season and this preseason and off season. And I don't know, when a guy like Cabledew gets hurt in the preseason game too, and we're not sure if he's going to make it, we see him come back to the sideline and they instantly swap you out for the guy that was just injured. that's never really a good sign and indictment from your coaching staff that you have a long shelf life with this team. And obviously now it comes to an end. I'm glad they were able to get D'Anthony Bell back onto the practice squad. I think he's going to have some, definitely game day elevations for them coming up here in the future. But overall, Mookie, like your early impressions now that it's kind of more settled down with this roster, Surratt and Paul Jr. are here and Jackson as well, Courtney Jackson. What are your overall thoughts of the guys they were able to bring in and where this roster currently sets going into week one?
Yeah, just thoughts on who they brought in. So Chris Paul Jr., Pooh Paul, I guess as he's known, he's on the practice squad. I'm not going to take too much into it other than, well, he's there and hopefully to develop because he was considered a surprise cut by the Los Angeles Rams. I mean, he's a fifth-round pick. And fifth-round picks usually have a high percentage of making the roster as rookies. So with Paul, he's just some potential linebacker depth, young, intriguing linebacker depth for Seattle. He seems to have good instincts. I don't really like how often he tackles high. So that's something that I imagine the coaching staff would pull him up on that. But just somebody to keep an eye on. With Surratt, he's going to be depth. It's a good chance that in meaningful game action, he's not going to see the field alongside Jones. Basically, I think he only sees the field if one of the starters is not available. But he will be an asset on special teams. And we're probably going to talk about it later on, but they really have to get the special teams right. And if you know what you're doing on special teams, that will calm me down and calm everybody else down after what we saw last year. Jackson would just be a potential return option. Be interesting because they're doing practice now as we're recording this live, but I'm curious to see what the first unofficial depth chart looks like and who is going to be the primary kick returner, who's going to be the primary punt returner. I know we were on 12 Talk yesterday, and they I don't know where they pulled up that depth chart. Maybe it was from ESPN or NFL.com, but I haven't seen the team actually release it yet. But I don't think it'd be too off base to think that Holani and Derek Young would be the primary kick returners, and then it would be Horton as the primary punt returner. So Jackson would just kind of be that in case of emergency, in case these guys aren't working out or they get hurt, we've got a guy on the practice squad who can fill that role. The guy that I'm not quite sure why he even got a waiver claim was Darion Kendrick. I mean, he was really just not good at all during his starting time with the Rams, except when it came to crunch time against Seattle, and then Drew Lock filling in for an injured Geno Smith, and Waldron bizarrely decided we are only going to throw long passes, and he gets the only interception of his career against Seattle. But I think like a couple weeks later, he got benched after getting destroyed by Terry McLaurin in the Commanders game. And yes, it's Terry McLaurin, but they were up 21, and he almost single-handedly let them complete a comeback, if not for the Commanders just being lousy. So he got benched pretty much after that game, or at least he lost his starting job, and then he was a DNP for the playoff game against the Lions. So between his lackluster play, coming off an ACL tear, and of course he's had legal troubles, not really sure what the upside here is with Kendrick, because he's also a penalty machine too. So I don't see great instincts coming out of somebody like Kendrick, but he is a cheaper option than Shaquille Griffin. And if it doesn't work out with Kendrick, well, you got a veteran corner on the practice squad. I think the theme we're seeing here, whether I like the player or not, is the Seahawks want younger, or say younger, but not totally inexperienced guys. So Kendrick has been a starter before. Surratt hasn't really been a starter multi-year, but he's had some game experience. And then Chris Paul Jr. is just a rookie on a practice squad. But it is noteworthy how the Seahawks are one of the youngest teams in the entire NFL. They average right now in the current 53, fourth youngest, thanks to Tyler Olsen for that statistic. And I believe that was the goal all along. Even though they've got some veterans like Kupp and Lawrence on 3-year deals, they're effectively 1-year deals with outs after year one. And I believe that they want to build kind of how they used to build, like be stacked with young talent across the board, across multiple positions. And the key now for the Seahawks is just identifying who's going to be a part of the long-term plan for the franchise in terms of contract extensions.
Yeah, the Kendricks thing was interesting to me as well, Mookie. The one point I wonder with, and it's just kind of going back and watching the preseason and the All-22, Josh Jobe did not impress me in the preseason. He actually didn't look all that solid compared to where he had finished last year at. Like he look to have struggled. Nehemiah Pritchett looked better in some respects than Josh Jobe did. I honestly believe in that situation where Josh Jobe got his interception versus the Raiders. If Aiden O'Connell didn't have a wet noodle for an arm, he might have actually been able to score on that, because that ball was so badly underthrown that it was basically Jobe catching a punt on that one. That's where I wonder if that's where they didn't go with Kendricks, is they're not sold on even Jobe or trusting Pritchett out there as the 3. And yes, to your point with Shaquille Griffin being on the practice squad, I think it gives him a chance to catch up because he did miss those initial couple of weeks of training camp. I'll be interested. Kendricks, to me, I think he's got a little bit more upside, but again, you got to see him actually fulfill that. The one for me that I'm really interested in is Paul. The Rams fan base, you look at their reaction to it, they are not happy down there in LA right now that even occurred. And I think Paul's going to be one of those guys that they're going to have to protect on the practice squad, because you heard Mike McDonald even say that they were actually very intrigued with him come the draft. And I wonder if he won't be eventually just fully elevated to the 53-man roster and they find some other way to someone comes off that roster or goes to IR or whatnot to get him up there. Because I think, honestly, he's the type of linebacker, and to your point, his tackling does need to improve to an extent, but he was wearing the green dot in LA during the preseason, which is a big deal to give to a young rookie player when even they're coming in and playing 3rd or 4th string defense. I think there's a discussion to be had if Paul does make it onto the 53 and does start contributing in certain areas. If Tyrese Knight has any sort of setback or anything, if Paul doesn't actually become the replacement for Tyrese Knight instead of a Drake Thomas.
Yeah, that is possible because, of course, O'Connell's also on the practice squad. And we thought, okay, O'Connell's definitely going to make this roster, and he didn't. But there's no worry because he's failed to make this roster 3 years in a row, and he's been able to get on the practice squad every time. So with Paul, we talk about upside with Kendrick. There's presumably more upside with Paul, and at a position I think of greater need for Seattle right now. And if he was somebody they were eyeing on the draft, it's worth noting they took no inside linebackers in what was generally considered a weak class for it. But he was one of those who I think was even thought to be a potential day 2 target for some teams, and he ended up taken in the 5th round. But yeah, it'll be fascinating to see the development there as far as the practice squad linebackers. Like, something happens tonight, something happens to Jones, or something happens even to the depth, meaning Surratt and Thomas, who's going to get called up. And it might be Paul over O'Connell. The only question I have is how much special teams Paul has done, because it's not like I'm watching Rams all 22 or looking at their snap counts in preseason. So if he does special teams, then good. If not, then O'Connell will probably get the call up. But yeah, just to essentially get a 5th round pick. And somebody pointed out, I believe that pick that the Rams had to get Paul was originally Seattle's and it was through the Sam Howell trade and everything. When Sam Howell got dealt to Minnesota, I think they did some pick swapping there, and the pick slot ended up going to Chris Paul Jr. So funny how that all worked out.
Yeah, and don't even poor Sam Howell. That guy just can't catch a break right now. But Mookie, let's kind of pivot a little bit here and go look at, the coaching identity now of this team. Obviously, we've seen through preseason what Kubiak's offense is going to look like to an extent, minus obviously the Green Bay game where we saw Andrew Janocko call a little bit of a different schematic game there for Jalen Milroe. But how much more confident after seeing this offense in the preseason are you than you were maybe last year with Ryan Grubb? Or are you as equally as confident?
I was still questioning how Grubb's offense would look in the regular season based off of his preseason because he has no prior NFL experience. Whereas with Kubiak, he does have it. And a good chunk of that offense looked similar to what he was running in New Orleans or what he was capable of running in New Orleans before everybody got hurt. And then you look at his preseason, and I see an identity there. I'm going to disregard any of the Milrose snaps because he's going to get a sub package of plays here, but it's not going to be a whole lot. It's going to be a handful of plays at best per game. So I'm only focusing on when Darnold played and when Locke played, because those two are going to be the ones running the offense, and preferably it's Darnold all the way, and we don't have to see Locke in anything but garbage time. But we're seeing more under center. We saw that when we were there at training camp. We saw that at the Lumen Field scrimmage. More under center, more boots, moving the pocket. What we didn't see a whole lot of were deep shots, and that sounds like something that they've been trying to do throughout camp, and it hasn't really clicked. But I think those will come. I think that's going to happen eventually. We've seen when the Saints got that red hot start last year, they were just firing it all the way down the field to Rashid Shaheed, and they were Carr was a quite aggressive quarterback those first couple of weeks. So with Sam Darnold, better arm, more accurate, I think. He could still hit a big shot to Smith and Jigba, or even to Elijah Arroyo off just like a leak out play. So I think that the identity of this offense is going to be run based. I don't think it is going to be most run heavy in the league. I'd rather it not be, truthfully, unless they're like the number one rushing attack. But the running game is clearly something that's McDonald was irked that they couldn't establish last year. And so far, throughout the preseason, with even whether it was Darnold or Locke in the game, they were running the ball very effectively. And Walker didn't play a snap. So getting to see Kenneth Walker potentially behind this offensive line, if they can create the same holes in preseason that they are able to do in the regular season, then Walker could be in for a special year. So I think that's the identity is going to be the run game, play action, find the explosives here and there, and also yards after catch. I think yards after catch is going to be an important part of this offense because the makeup of this receiving group, not the same as Minnesota's, obviously, for Sam Darnold, when you got Jefferson and Addison, and then Hawkinson is in there as well. Above the rim winners, it's Jake Bobo, but he's your wide receiver 4, and he's got a pretty limited route tree as a result of his lack of speed and athleticism. But JSN can be a yak option. We know Cooper Kupp can be. And then Elijah Arroyo and AJ Barner, I think they can do some rumbling if they get the ball in space. And then the screen game. Like, please, can this be the coordinator who can get a functioning running back screen game going for the Seahawks? Because if he can, then that opens things up as far as what Walker and Charbonnet can do. But yeah, the identity for Seattle, I believe, is much more clearly established and defined under Kubiak than it was for Ryan Grubb. I am not saying that means this is going to be an elite offense or even a top 6, top 7 offense, but we're going to have a clear vision of what they want to run.
Yeah, that's kind of how I took it from this preseason as well, Mookie. I really have more confidence in the direction, especially with the run game and what we saw. Like last year, I went back and I kind of was like, you know what, I want to look into our run game in the preseason. Did it really show signs of life? And it really didn't. Like, it was kind of just there. Like, it didn't really, and we should have been able to see some of that in some opinion from me, that this offense, we got more excited about the passing games and the stuff that they were doing that way than we were looking at the run game. And Seattle's run game in the preseason was very indicative of what that looked like during the season. And so I think that's kind of twofold going into this year. We're seeing a good run game. We're seeing a consistent run game of them moving guys, whether it's third, fourth, first teamers. We saw that. And so I think that leads me to have a little bit more faith in the direction starting out a little bit with the offense going forward. Now, switching to the defensive side, Mookie, I'm going to ask you it this way. Mike McDonald's been able to put his stamp now on this defense. It's his guys. They're in there. After last season, the way they ended, do you expect them to pick up right from where they left off at the end of last year? Or do you expect there to be a few games of kind of getting the ball rolling again before they really take off?
Well, I expect them to be picking off a lot of teams this year. As far as picking up where they left off, to me, the caution with this defense, 2 things. One, are they better at defending play action than they were last year? Because they were, even after Ernest Jones got here, even after they swapped the linebackers out, they sent Baker and Dotson back, and they inserted Knight and Jones into the lineup. They weren't any better at defending play action. So that's going to be like a 3-level thing. They have to get better at that. And the funny thing is the run defense improved and they were still getting drilled against play action. And then the second bit is, can they be effective against better offenses? Because as good as they were in the second half of the season, the first half of the Packers game was atrocious. And I think they were good enough against Minnesota, but they had pivotal lapses that I think a top flight defense wouldn't really have. So if they can show that they have elite defense, show that they can be like an elite defense against better offenses. So I'm talking, let's say, the Commanders offense, for example, and that's going to be a little bit further down the line. Then I am confident, or I would be confident, that the Seahawks could have a top 5 unit. And the continuity matters because think about who left. Draymond Jones, who was just a bust of a free agent signing. He didn't fit. and he wasn't bad, but he wasn't what Seattle hoped he would be. Roy Robertson, Harris, you're talking about rotational end. So it's really those two. Everybody else of consequence is still here. You're still going to have Kobe and Love at the safety spots. You're going to have Reek and Witherspoon. You mentioned Josh Jobe, and we'll see if Josh Jobe regresses a bit, and they might have to play Pritchard, or they might have to call up Shaq, or they're going to play Kendrick. But that the third cornerback spot is a little bit iffy, admittedly. But Jones and Knight, presumably your starters, assuming that Knight doesn't have any setbacks with his health or his injuries. And then the defensive line, you've added Tank Lawrence to a group that has Nwosu back and hopefully on his road to recovery and playing soon, in addition to Mafe and Hall and Williams and Murphy, Jaron Reed. I could go on and on. So they should be more familiar with this defense and what McDonald wants to run. I believe that they are going to blitz more, and I believe Nick Eamon-Warri's presence is one of the reasons that they're going to be more aggressive getting after the quarterback. So do I expect some hiccups? Absolutely. But I believe that overall they're going to look like a cohesive unit a lot sooner against better teams than we saw last year, where, yeah, this defense looked really good against debuting Bo Nix and Skylar Thompson. But as soon as they played, even Daniel Jones was evidently a step too far from them. So now that it's a full offseason for Jones and Knight and everybody else, I'm very, very high on what this defense can be and what McDonald can do.
So, Mookie, let's kind of pivot here a little bit, and we'll take a look at the division. Where, in your opinion, do the Seahawks sit going into week one in the pecking order of the NFC West?
No worse than second. So the caveats for Seattle would be the health of Matthew Stafford with the Rams, because if his back is functioning, and he apparently is going to start against the Texans, or McVay expects him to start against the Texans, then I think that the Rams are basically as good as the Seahawks, assuming that their defense improves. They got a lot of young talent there, and their offensive firepower. Kyron Williams, as much as I think that he fumbles a little bit and his ball security is careless, you got Kyron Williams and you got Blake Horn. That's a pretty good 1-2 punch there. And then you've got Devontae Adams now alongside Puka Nacua. And I think Devontae still got something left in the tank. It's not his fault that he got to play, that he ended up playing with a fading Aaron Rodgers. And who was the Raiders starting quarterback last? Minshew. And then whoever else, and O'Connell. So I think there's still something left there as far as his ability to contribute offensively. So I think that the Rams and Seahawks are really close together. 49ers, if everybody is healthy, of course, they'll be in the mix. But there's so many injury questions. I know they got a lot of people back from practice Monday, but there are a lot of questions about the turnover they had on defense. Think about the people that they've lost. Whether it's, I said Hargrave on Syndicate last week, but Hargrave didn't play a whole lot for San Francisco last season, and he got injured. But you still lose Malik Collins. Greenlaw's gone. Hufanga is gone. Charvarius Ward is gone. Leonard Floyd is gone too. So they're making a lot of changes here and relying on younger players. And one of those younger players, Malik Mustafa, is hurt, so he's not going to play week one. So the Niners defense that we see week one, highly unlikely to be the defense that we see in week 18. So I think that there are more question marks regarding San Francisco than I would say the national media realizes, because even on offense, like, okay, Purdy's got his money, cool and all. Can McCaffrey hold up? And if he can't hold up, well, Brian Robinson's at least a capable back, but the receiver position, even when healthy, Ayuk isn't back for another few weeks. How will Pearsall handle what would effectively be wide receiver one duties for the time being? How is Jawan Jennings going to look? I think that he is on track to play, but if he's still wanting a new contract, who knows if he plays? They're still looking for receivers. They signed MVS to the practice squad. They're getting a visit from Kendrick Bourne, apparently. So there's a whole lot going on with the 49ers. And the Cardinals, who I'll leave to the briefest opinion, I think that they have talent. I think that their defense could be a really good unit, especially since I think that they've improved their pass rush significantly. I'm not sold that Kyler Murray can go a full season of consistent high-level play, because he's never done that. We talk about the Cliff Kingsbury dive, the Jekyll and Hyde offense. Maybe some of that was really Kyler. And I think that's the other issue for Arizona is I don't think the receiving group is that good. Harrison Jr., I think, is going to be really good. But then you get to Dortch and Michael Wilson, and I can't remember who else they brought in, and I'm underwhelmed. So I think that the focus on Arizona's offense is going to be more the running game than the passing game. And even with the passing game, it'd be more with Bryde and Harrison. So I think Seattle is in second at worst, and I believe that they have the potential to be the best when it's all said and done.
I'm right there with you, Mookie. I think they're second right now. I think they do have to prove something in this opening game. Some people have said, oh, is it a statement game for Seattle? Even if they lose, it 100% is, because if Seattle can come out and actually dictate terms to the 49ers and kind of return to being a bit of the bully and set the tone, like, hey, we don't play you guys again until week 18, but we're just going to let you know, like, this is what happened in week 1. That is what is going to happen to you back in Santa Clara in week 18. I think it really sets the Seahawks up for a good chance at taking this division. So, Mookie, I'm going to ask you this quick question before we move off to the next one. Give me one word that sums up your confidence right now in Seattle.
Boy, that's a tough one. Going with optimistic. So that I am optimistic. I am not Homer-like, but just optimistic. I feel good. I feel better about this offseason as it's gone along. Those first couple of months when Geno left and DK was traded and Lockett was cut, and then they were signing MVS and Kupp and Lawrence and all those guys, I thought, okay, I'm lukewarm for now. But then the draft happened, and okay, now my confidence is raising. And then I see Torrey Horton develop in training camp in person. I go, all right, my confidence is really on the rise. And then I watch how the O-line looks in preseason, at least the first teamers or the healthy first teamers, and go, all right, I think I see something here, and that we should be in for not a rebuild year, but a year where they are pushing for the playoffs.
You can go with optimistic. I will go with promising. I'm the one that keeps saying they're going to go 13-4. I'm going to go with the word promising right now is how I look at Seattle. So, Mookie, let's take a pivot here over to the extended spotlights feature of our show today. So, give me one Seahawk on offense and defense that you think is prime for a breakout season in 2025.
I'm going to go with a second-year player on both sides of the ball. So on defense, I will start with defense. I think that Byron Murphy is going to have a much better statistical season than we saw in his rookie year. I think we're going to see him play at nose less. And having Lawrence there, having that extra depth, I think we're going to see him move around a bit more. I think we're going to see him really get after the quarterback more often. I think he's still going to be really good in run defense, but it's what he can provide as an interior pass rusher that I'm most excited to see. I feel like he's Jaron Reed's seal of approval that this kid is strong. He's really strong, and I'm not going to use the word we don't want to get this channel demonetized or anything down the line, but he's strong as heck. If I can self-sanitize here, I believe that's going to show itself in the regular season. And on offense, might not be who you think. I'm going with AJ Barner as a breakout player for the Seahawks offense. I know Elijah Arroyo is the shiny new toy as a receiving tight end, and I think that Arroyo could have a significant role in this offense right away. But Barner as this two-way tight end, this all-around tight end, I think he can end up being one of the more underrated players in the league if he continues this trajectory. So I think his receiving skills, I way underrated them. He's got good hands. He seems like a smooth route runner, and he's willing to take on contact. Like that Arizona game, the second one, the one in Glendale, where he just ran over that Cardinals defender. Like that's what I love to see in a tight end. But his blocking is the thing that he needs, I think, a little bit more refinement. But I trust that that's going to be something that the coaching staff will have worked on. But yeah, I'm going with AJ Barner as somebody who's going to be the primary tight end because he's a better blocker than Arroyo. But also he's going to be John Carlson in spirit, because you and I were riding to dinner with Dan and Brandon after FanFest going, you know who Barner reminds me of? And you said it, John Carlson. I was about to say the same thing. So I think that this is going to be another John Carlson situation with AJ Barner, because before Carlson got hurt and the concussions happened, the shoulder injury happened, like he was really good on bad offenses. AJ Barner, I think, can be a really good player on a good offense.
Well, you go back to John Carlson, you think of that, first Pete Carroll playoff victory in the Beastquake game. John Carlson had 2 touchdowns in that game and was a massive receiving factor in that game for Matt Hasselbeck. I'll give you two names. My first name for offense this year for breakout is Zach Charbonnet. I think Zach Charbonnet is going to lead this team in rushing touchdowns and rushing yards. And I know there's a lot of K9 supporters out there, but Charbonnet looks different. And I mentioned that to you on the berm with Brandon Kane and Dan Vians that, hey, man, like Charbonnet's leaned out a little bit, but still looks strong. But, man, he's more explosive than he was last year. And I think we saw it on some of the runs in that first drive versus the Chiefs. I really am primed to see a Zach Charbonnet breakout season. The other guy on defense for me that I'm looking to have a breakout season is Derek Hall. And I know last year he had a good year, but I think Derek Hall gets 10 plus sacks this year. I'm putting the pressure on a little bit there for D Hall, but I think with DeMarcus Lawrence, Chenna coming back and maybe being more of a factor than we initially think because of him not having to play all the snaps now that we have Lawrence here and such, I think there's a strong chance Derek Hall could probably lead that edge group in sacks and maybe even the team in sacks this year. I like his explosion coming off the edge. I like his motor. I think he's got a lot of those things going for him. I think there's a chance that Derek Hall has 10 plus sacks this year. It'll be interesting, but those are my two breakout guys. So next question, Mookie, in this extended spotlight segment is, what's the single biggest factor that makes or breaks Seattle's playoff hopes this year?
That's almost a rhetorical question. It's this offensive line. If the offensive line is just mediocre, if it's like the 17th or 18th best offensive line in the league, pass blocking, and even if they're like an okay run blocking team, then I think this offense can function. But if they're if they're only marginally better than last year, then it's going to be bad for Darnold. It's going to be bad for the running game. It's also going to hurt Jalen Milroe's effectiveness when he is in the game, if he's running behind a bad offensive line, and the whole operation is going to fall apart. Because I think it's much easier for a team to fall apart because of their offense than their defense. So, like, yes, I know a team like the Bengals last year, defense was horrific, and their offense was Joe Burrow was heroic. But we've seen teams like the Jets when it gets really bad, where the Jets, not last year, but maybe 2 years ago, boy, this defense is good. It's too bad they can't score consistently. And even we didn't look further than last year's Seahawks. That defense toward the end of the year was good enough to be a playoff team. And the offense's inconsistency is why they missed the playoffs. As closely as they missed, they still miss. So I think that what makes or breaks the season is the improvement of this offensive line, because the O-line is good. I think Darnold should be good. The running game should be much better, and that and they can basically be a more balanced team than we've seen in years past. Balanced in a good way. I don't mean balanced at, boy, they're just as bad on offense as they are on defense. I mean, they can be in the top 15 on both categories.
So it's funny. My answer to this is actually going to play into the next question anyways, Mookie. What makes or breaks Seattle's playoff hopes is going to be the special teams unit. I think the offense will be fine. I think the defense will be great. I think this special teams unit could be, if they can't get their stuff together, and I censor myself, they'll get their stuff together. I think there could be moments in games that are crucial for Seattle that the special teams unit comes up short or costs them that game, that inevitably backfires on them when it comes to a tiebreaker in some scenario or something. I have very little faith right now in our special teams unit getting it together. And it's one of the things that I think makes or breaks Seattle's playoff hopes. So when it comes for me on the hot seat meter of which player or coach is under the most pressure right now, it's Jay Harbaugh for me. He's got to get this unit figured out. He's got to get it fixed, and he's got to make him. And I'm not asking for him to have a top 5 special teams unit, but get us to the middle of the pack where I'm not sitting there going, are we going to, blow coverage on a punt or a kickoff and we're going to have a guy run 65, 70 yards back for a touchdown the other direction. Those are kind of the things that just play in the back of my mind, where I think this offense will be fine, this defense will be fine, but can the special teams side of the ball hold up their end?
Yeah, the only coach to me who's on the hot seats is Harbaugh, and it's by default because Dirty doesn't call the plays on defense. And then on offense, Kubiak, it would take an unbelievable disaster for Kubiak to also be one and done. And then McDonald's got several years left on his contract. He should be fine. There's no reason to flip the switch and turn against McDonald right now. They have a really bad season. Maybe the honeymoon ends, but he's not in danger of getting fired this year. Harbaugh, I think, absolutely is. So we'll see what happens with Jason Myers, because he is well into his 30s, and he's never been the most year-to-year consistent kicker. But if he's good, if he's just, as long as he's not ruinous, I think we're fine there. Michael Dixon's Michael Dixon. Coverage units have to be much better. The kick and punt return coverage units, especially that Jets game, which was maybe the single worst special teams performance I've ever seen from the Seahawks. It was compounding. I think they had a PAT blocks in that game. They gave up a kick return touchdown. Chanel lost a fumble and Williams lost a fumble. In fact, I think Williams fumbled twice. Or somebody in that game fumbled twice. It was a complete embarrassment. And you could have fired Harbaugh like right there and then. That was how bad they were. But this year, it's still to be determined who's actually going to be getting regular special team snaps. So as much as things like the Sky Moore punt return touchdown were irksome, I'm pretty sure everybody on the field that day didn't make the roster. So if the first teamers on special teams are still struggling to cover kicks, create holes for the returners, then I think we're going to end up being on Harbaugh's case a lot this year. So he's under the microscope the most out of anybody on this coaching staff, entirely because of what happened last season. And when you juxtapose Harbaugh's struggles, I know they ranked highly by DVOA, but it was mostly Myers and Dixon. Everybody else was bad. But Larry Izzo turned the ship around from the Brian Schneider days. And Izzo did a really good job. And he's somebody I wish Seattle would have retained. He's over in Washington now, as are a ton of other Seahawks, former Seahawks. But, yep, Harbaugh, this is – please – Do not be here to like sabotage the Seahawks, in the name of Jim, just to get back at Pete in a roundabout way.
All right, Mookie. Well, let's get into something that I think a lot of people want us to talk about and be kind of a topic of conversation on this channel for the week. And I think all Seahawk content creators, but the Seahawks 49ers week 1 showdown. So I'm going to give you a couple storylines here, Mookie, with this game, and I think we can elaborate on them. So the first one is this game a statement opportunity for Seattle to flip the script on the NFC West as a whole?
It's not the end of the world if they lose week 1, unless it's kind of like the Rams game where, oh my goodness, not only did they lose the game badly, but they lost both tackles. But you can't be dropping division games at home. And that's what's killed Seattle the last 2 years. Losing to the Niners and the Rams at home each of the last 2 years has directly affected how their playoff fates have gone. Compare that to the better years of Seahawks football. Look at 2012. Yeah, they went 3-3 in the division, and they lost the division just narrowly to San Francisco, but they held serve at home. They hammered the 49ers. That, talk about a statement game. That was a hammering and a half on Harbaugh's birthday, Jim's birthday, that is. They 58-0 Arizona, and they did enough to beat the Rams and, keep their wild card seeding good and all that. But I believe that this is an important game because of what it means in the standings early on. If Seattle were to hypothetically have played Pittsburgh this weekend, I go, no, this is not a statement game. It's not an important part of the tiebreaker. It's a week 1 game, road game on the East Coast, blah, blah, blah. If they lose, fine, we move on. But against San Francisco, a team that you have not beaten at home since 2021 and who bullied you more often than not the last few years, a chance to, as you said, flip the script and do the bullying to San Francisco, I think would really get this fan base juiced up. It's not just about what it means for the Seahawks as far as 1-0 versus 0-1. It's also what it means for the fans, too. If they get a win by any means necessary, even if they win by 3 points, whether they win by 3 or 30, the fans coming out of Lumen Field are going to get that euphoric rush, that wave of enthusiasm and hype going, all right, 2 in a row against San Francisco. The tide might be turning, and they've got a key divisional win. So, yeah, in a race as tight as the NFC West, I think they cannot afford to drop a divisional home game. And they don't have another divisional home game until after the bye week. So, like, this is your big chance to set it straight this first month. You got San Francisco week 1, at Arizona week 4. As far as I'm concerned, that's 2 home games. It's just that one is the summer vacation home. So if you take care of both, go 2-0 right out the gates. I mean, that to me is already an early statement from Seattle, and a positive one at that.
I really look at this too, Mookie, as for me is a huge statement game because you are getting a limping, injury-riddled 49ers team. I know there's been reports that Juwan Jennings and Pooney and them have started to practice this week. We'll see if it actually comes down to kickoff, if they actually play or not. But this team is in a state of flux, the 49ers, in my opinion. There's so much change going on there. This is where good teams and teams that want to be great put their foot on somebody's throat and finish the job. And that's what Seattle needs to do here. Put the Niners out of their misery week one and explain to them they no longer own this division and it's up for grabs now. And it also will bring the fans back. And that's the one thing we've talked about for years now. Seattle's home record has been abysmal. They're losing fans. Fans aren't coming to the games. You need to give the fans a reason to be at the game. And if you do that by beating it up on a 49ers team, and I personally think that the Seahawks have the ability to beat up on this 49ers team and really lay a good whooping on them, they have to do that in week one here. It sets the tone for the rest of the season. And to your point, that game against the Cardinals is essentially our vacation home. We like to hang out there. There is some bad juju at that stadium, but still, you don't want to go down and be 1-1 or even 0-2. Like, for whatever reason, say you do drop that Cardinals game. Now you're 0-2 in your division if you don't win this first game. The NFL has given you a blessing in some respects of having a home divisional game out of the gate week one where teams are still trying to figure things out. You have a defense that's played together for over a year now. You should be able to take advantage of an injury-riddled team. And that's kind of my look on it. And speaking of injuries, like, this 49ers receiving core, if Jennings can play, is still battered up with Sky Moore and MVS basically going to having to take significant reps in it. That's got to be the main focus of attack, in my opinion, for Seattle's defense, is to just beat up those 49ers receivers at any chance they get.
Yeah, this is not the 49ers stacked receiving group of yesteryear. Debo's gone, of course. And even the Debo we saw in the last Seattle game, he looked a shell of himself. So Ayuk is not back. So you're looking at, let's say, Pearsall, Jawan Jennings. Maybe they elevate MVS for a day. And then Demarcus Robinson suspended too. I keep forgetting about that. So they're going to be funneling a lot of passes, I think, to George Kittle. And that's, to me, if Seattle can't stop Kittle, and I have to make note that in the win against San Francisco last year, Kittle was out. If they can't stop Kittle, then Seattle's got some of the same old familiar problems again. But I think that after they put Jones and Knight into the lineup, from my recollection, they did a much better job stopping tight ends after they were inserted into the lineup, because the first few weeks of the season, I mean, Hunter Henry looked reborn in that New England game. And the linebackers were a huge part of that in Baker and Dotson. So, yeah, if San Francisco is forced to pass the ball a lot, pure drop back, goodbye to your play action, get a lead big enough that they have no choice but to throw the ball, I think that those Niners receivers are going to have a hard time getting open one-on-one against the secondary. Now, if the game is close, if it's a neutral game script situation, Shanahan can seemingly scheme just about anyone open. But with a year to film on Shanahan's offense for Mike Macdonald, and just Macdonald's general history of studying and going up against Shanahan and McVay type offenses, I believe that this Seahawks defense is well equipped to slow San Francisco down. Not saying that they're going to hold them to 6 points or anything like that, but to slow them down. And in part because the San Francisco offense on paper is not as strong as the ones that they've been getting shredded by over the last few seasons.
Yeah, for me, it's take Kittle and CMC out of the equation for this team. Stifle the run. It'll help with that. You know, what we talked about earlier, Seattle's ability to play against play action defensively. If you can stifle CMC and it doesn't give Kittle those kind of free abilities to get past the linebackers, because the linebackers have sucked up into the run game, it'll be a hard day. And we know with Brock Purdy, and that's kind of the other point here, Mookie, of the storylines, is Purdy under pressure versus Seattle's revamped, in a way, defensive front with DeMarcus Lawrence and all these, added additions. How do you see that, kind of going for Seattle? Because I look at this O-line for the 49ers, and if Pooney can't go, Trent Williams isn't exactly getting any younger. He's still a phenomenal left tackle, but, his abilities are definitely slowing down a bit. If we can get some pressure on Purdy and actually collapse that pocket on him, we've seen what happens to Purdy. He kind of melts away a little bit from being the guy that everyone wanted to see get this huge money and was talking as a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah, well, Purdy did get his huge money, so that's the good news for him.
He did.
And maybe the good news for the rest of the division if the magic runs out. But Purdy at times can improvise pretty well. It's just that when he's under siege consistently, he can panic his way into some dangerous throws. Look at the interception last year. I think there was some pressure that led to Witherspoon getting a hand on the ball tipped, and big Jonathan Hankins was able to get the pick. But what's killed Seattle against San Francisco is not getting enough pressure on Purdy, or when they do get pressure on Purdy, oh, look, somebody's running wide open in the middle of the field or down the sidelines, and it doesn't matter anyway. So just marrying your pass rush to your coverage. If you can take away the easy stuff, and maybe, to me, if you can actually make Purdy hold the ball longer, that could create some scenarios where he's going to start forcing throws. So, the pass rush is going to be key. And I'd love to see how they can get pass rush without blitzing. If they can get pass rush with just 4, I think that is it. And this is an obvious statement, but if you can get pass rush with just 4 against San Francisco's offensive line, that is absolutely vital. But even just sim pressures or something to throw San Francisco off their rhythm, I think that McDonald is going to have a lot of tricks up his sleeve as a means of confusing and flustering Purdy. And of course, it's week 1. Even though they've got some familiarity with each other with a couple of matchups, we are still working with generally a clean slate. You're going to have new installs, you're going to have new looks and everything for both teams. So it's going to be a fascinating chess match and cat and mouse game, whatever you want to use as far as Seattle's defense against San Francisco's offense.
So the last thing I'm going to ask you, Mookie, I think we've already kind of touched on it, but we'll just get into it because it is the 49er Seahawks Week 1 Showdown segment part. Can Seattle's new O-line hold up against Bosa and the 49ers youth movement on their defensive line?
I think they're going to have a hard time with Bosa by default because it's Nick Bosa. As he's one of the best in the business, he's going to be really hard to shut down. I don't want to pour cold water over last year's win, but Bosa being out of the game for the last drive was a big help as far as getting the W there, because Nick Sorensen was not interested one bit for whatever reason in sending an extra rusher until it was too late, and Gino carved him up and got the win. But with Robert Saleh, going to be a different story because Saleh is an excellent defensive coordinator. But I'm curious to see what happens when it's just Bosa that you've got to focus on as far as like established pass rushers, because who would be their other key pass rushers, like Gross Matos? Gross Matos, I think, is healthy enough, but as I said, Leonard Floyd's gone. So are they going to repeatedly put Bosa one-on-one with Abe Lucas, or if Bosa moves to the other side and they want to move him around? I'm curious to see what Kubiak does there. If the benefit of having 12 and 13 personnel usage, are they going to chip Bosa? Are they going to send extra bodies at him, move the pocket, provide more time? Because if they can, then Seattle's offense, I think, is going to be in good shape. To me, it comes down to whether they can run the ball effectively. And Bosa can get caught out sometimes, and that's where I'm curious to see how much Milroe is used as far as potential zone read keepers. We've seen Bosa and many other pass rushers, they're so eager that they can get caught guessing the wrong way and maybe turn Bosa's aggressiveness against him with some of the run looks that they give. So, yeah, I think that it'll be hard to contain Bosa if it's just a one-on-one, but if it's going to be sending – having a double team on Bosa or using a running back to help chip or a tight end or 2 tight ends to chip, don't make Bosa beat you is the key. Just like, NBA teams go, make somebody else other than LeBron or Michael Jordan beat us. It's make somebody else other than Nick Bosa. And Fred Warner, we're just going to have to concede. But make somebody else other than Nick Bosa beat Seattle in terms of the pass rush and what they can do against the run.
I totally agree, Mookie. And so let's move into a kind of a fun part of this, Mookie, before we get out of this segment. What are your 3 keys to victory? I won't give mine away because all Seahawk listeners on the Hawks side will get that every Saturday morning. I will drop my 3 keys to victory in the Seahawks blueprint to success. So make sure you guys have your notifications checked for that. But I will get Mookie's now. Mookie, what are your 3 keys to a Seahawks victory?
All right. My number 1 key is win in the trenches in the run game specifically. So, of course, you always want to win in the trenches, but the run game has been wildly lopsided in San Francisco's favor in each of the last 3 seasons. Seattle's only rushed for over 100 yards one time over the last 7 meetings, and that was the playoff loss, and they were kind of out of the game. Not even kind of. They were definitely out of the game late on, and even then, Kenneth Walker, I think, had a long run of 9. So they weren't hitting explosives in that game. they've been under 100 the other games. San Francisco, explosive run after explosive run. The bulk of them have come from Christian McCaffrey, but they've also had Isaac Orendo pop a big run, or they've had Elijah Mitchell pop a big run, or Deebo Samuel on a handoff, have a huge run. So it doesn't always have to be the running back. So if Seattle can start bullying San Francisco's defensive line, get some big running plays. I'm not saying it has to be home runs. Hit some doubles and triples. If he can get a 15-yard run, if he can get a 30-yard run against this group, a remade group that's going to have two rookies there in the rotation, and CJ West and Alfred Collins, then that takes a lot of pressure off of Sam Darnold. Because if it's just a pure drop back game for Sam Darnold, the Niners can pin their ears back and get after him, then we might see some of the limitations of this offense come to light. So that's my number one key is for Seattle, win the rushing battle. Hit the explosives, limit the explosives coming from McCaffrey and Robinson and whomever else is going to touch the ball. Number two, the turnover battle. 14-4 in turnovers as far as these last three seasons. Seattle has given it away repeatedly. San Francisco has been clean as a whistle in half their games, and then the turnovers that they had in the Drew Lock start were inconsequential, essentially. So if Seattle could take care of the ball, which was really hard last year, and has been really hard against San Francisco in general, then you're limiting the chances for San Francisco to get short fields, get defensive scores, whatever. So I think that's another hugely important thing just from a historical standpoint. And then my third key is the special teams, but not because of Jay Harbaugh and his units necessarily. San Francisco had really awful special teams last year too, and they fired their coordinator from what I remember. And actually, yeah, their coordinator was Brian Schneider, right? So they were 32nd in special teams by DVOA. Jake Moody is a very shaky kicker. I mean, he had a 59-yard game winner against the Raiders in preseason. He also, I think, missed an extra point, and he's missed much shorter field goals in preseason, which is a microcosm of how he's been in the NFL. Good use of a third-round pick, as always. You got it when you have a third-round pick, you got to use it on a kicker. So with Jake Moody, if Seattle can hold San Francisco to field goals, I don't trust Moody to hit the bulk of them. He is a notoriously unreliable kicker. But also, can they get some block kicks? Can they get some block punts? Do something that can flip the field. Can they force a turnover on special teams of the 49ers? So, yeah, those are my three keys in summation. Win the running game battle, win the turnover battle, and be better at special teams. Seattle's got a weakness in special teams. San Francisco's had a real bad weakness in special teams. Let's see if Seattle special teams can suck less than San Francisco's. Because that's going to be the difference to me, those are the three differences in the game.
I agree. And like I said, guys, I will have my three keys to the victory on Saturday. So you guys will have that the day before the Seahawks go in to play the 49ers. So Mookie, I'll get this from you. Who is one X factor in this game for you? A player that's not a star that you think could have an immediate impact and maybe turn the tide in favor of the Seahawks?
Okay. I know it's tempting to say Robbie Oots because I'm seeing some Oots love in the comment section, but I love me some fullbacks, but the number of snaps that Robbie Oots is going to play is not going to be high relative to the rest of the offense. I'm going to go with Torrey Horton. Now, I know it's a big task for him, week one, but there are two factors here for Horton. One, the assumption that he's going to be returning some kicks. And then the second bit is how he's going to be as what we assume to be the third option wide receiver. So, I left out the obvious one. So JSN and Cooper Kupp are not X factors. Those are your star players in the passing offense. But what Horton can do as an underneath yak guy, can he take the top off the defense? I'm very curious to see when Sam Darnold takes that first deep shot or deep shots, is Horton going to be one of the primary targets? I think that Horton has the potential to be that deep option that Kupp really isn't these days, unless you schemed open. And then for JSN, he's got short area quickness, but he's not a home run hitter historically where he's going to get loads of separation 30 yards down the field. Whereas Torrey Horton, I believe, absolutely can be that guy. And San Francisco's secondary, as I said, other than Lenore still being there and Renardo Green's in his second season, it is a significantly remade secondary. And Trey Brown didn't even make the roster. They put him on IR for the year. So Upton Stout, I think, is going to be a starter, or at least somebody's going to be getting snaps, and he's a rookie. Obviously, they're remade the safety group, and Jair Brown is a third-year guy. Hufanga's gone. So I think there are going to be opportunities for Seattle to attack. And I believe that Horton is going to be a pivotal piece in Seattle's passing offense, not just for this game, but also throughout the season. I am biased, of course, because I've been a Torrey Horton stan for over a year now, ever since the Colorado, or 2 years now, ever since the Colorado game back then. But yes, my man Torrey Horton, he's going to be the X factor.
All right, and my last thing, Mookie, give me one bold prediction for the game. Some weird moment, surprise performance, a score. Give me one bold prediction for the game.
Seattle does not trail for 1 second of the game. Now, that doesn't mean it's a blowout, but Seattle, in these last 3 years at home, you know how many minutes that they've led against the 49ers?
I'm guessing
Exactly. 0 minutes. They trailed wire to wire in 2022, trailed wire to wire in 2023, and trailed wire to wire in 2024. So that's how not competitive it's been. Even the 2022 game was deceptively close. They lost 21-13. They were way overmatched in that game. So I think that they're going to flip it around. They're going to get an early lead, and they're going to hold off San Francisco. Keep them at arm's length. I would be really impressed and shocked and amazed all at once if they absolutely just lambaste the 49ers and hammer them by 31. But kind of like what Pete did in his first game in 2010, that would be the dream, obviously. But I think they are going to get the ball first, win the coin toss, or maybe San Francisco to first, but they're going to get the ball on offense first, and they're going to get that opening drive touchdown. And they're essentially not going to let San Francisco string possessions together and take the lead. So the moment Seattle gets the lead, they're not relinquishing it. So that is my prediction. And by default, by the way, that means I'm picking the Seahawks to win the game.
All right, Mookie. So let's do this. Let's do rapid fire. I love this. It's a new segment I've added into our guest appearance shows, guys. There's a longer format for those ones. It's called the 2-minute drill. You'll see that on the episode with Clint Bonner from the Seahawkers that will drop on Tuesday. But this is rapid fire from Mookie on week 1. Mookie, who scores Seattle's first touchdown?
Kenneth Walker, red zone, couple yards out.
Okay. Which Seahawk records the first sack of the season?
Big Cat.
Okay. Over, under 2.5 turnovers forced by Seattle in this game.
I'm going under. I think they'll force 2.
Okay. All right. So that wraps up, guys, our State of the Seahawks portion of this show. Now what we get to do is the fun part that me and Mookie always love doing, viewer Q&A. And there's been a lot of you guys in this chat commenting. I've bookmarked a bunch of them, guys. I really appreciate you guys being so involved in the chat. It's awesome. And we've got about 536 of you guys watching, about 400 of you or so on my Twitter, which is great. Guys, if you're on the Twitter side of things, you can comment in the chat feed on the Twitter. It will populate over here. I'll give a shout out right now to Tom, who's a first-time listener, long-time Hawks fan, solid content. Guys, go Hawks. Tom, really appreciate it. Guys, if you are on X, you can comment into the show. You don't have to be on YouTube to do that. But if you guys are over there and you haven't already, please click subscribe to the YouTube channel. It'd be greatly appreciated. So with that being said, Mookie, let's get into our viewer Q&A. And the first one we got here is I'd rather be flying an X-Wing, who we met down in Seattle. He goes, what's up, guys? Bryce, I'm super excited to see the Seattle shove where the ball gets snapped through Milroe's legs to Darnold and he hits a tight end leaking out. I wouldn't put it past them to have some funky version of that once they get that established, kind of come into play eventually when they did put Milroe and Darnold out on the field at the same time.
Yeah, just don't get too cute because, I've got a little bit of PTSD as far as the Seahawks getting way too cute against the 49ers. And Shane Waldron can see
Dallas.
Yes, you know what? I just feel like DJ Dallas is a quarterback today. And then he throws the worst pass you've ever seen. Seattle shove sounds cool. If they keep sneaking it with Milroe, we're going to have to come up with a good name. I said Pike Place Push last week on Syndicate. But I mean, they're the Highway 99 heave. I don't know. We could keep going and come up with new names as we go along.
All right. So we got Kick up in here. Always good to see you in here, man. He goes, Bryce, do you still think we make the conference? I'm guessing conference game after the Packer upgraded with Micah. Well, Micah's clearly dealing with a back injury that's almost nearing what clearly Stafford is, that he's going to potentially need an epidural in his back to play this week versus the Lions. So I don't know if Micah going to the Packers immediately makes them the number 2 team in the conference. I still think it's the Eagles coming off the Super Bowl. We'll have to see how Nick Sirianni and them handle it. But I look at the NFC West, Mookie, as really a wide open conference. There's no real major power in it where I go, like, you look over at the AFC, you've got the Chiefs who have always been one. The Bills are definitely a power. If the Bengals can get their things together, they're one. The Ravens are one. Like, there is a bunch of teams over there with good quarterback play that definitely kind of are. The AFC kind of controls the conference power right now, I would say. And we see this every 10 years or so. It kind of goes back and forth. For a long time in the NFC, it was the NFC that had all the power, right? So I still think the Seahawks, if they, like, I'll stick to my thing and my bold prediction, 13-4 and 2 playoff wins, I could see Seattle still being in the conference game, even though Micah has gone to the Packers.
Yeah, I'm not expecting conference championship for Seattle, which is a hint as far as my predictions for the season. But it's not inconceivable, if only because, as Bryce said, the NFC has been wide open for a long time. You notice all the dynasties the last couple of decades have been on the AFC side. So and I say all, I mean two: New England, Kansas City. But the other layer of teams, like Peyton Manning went to 4 Super Bowls between his time with the Colts and the Broncos, 2 AFC teams, or Ben Roethlisberger made 3 Super Bowls with Pittsburgh, or you have Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are always in the mix, at least in the divisional round. Josh Allen's been to a couple of conference championship games. So it's only a handful of quarterbacks in the AFC who ever make a run. Joe Burrow's been to a Super Bowl, and he's been to a conference championship game. But in the NFC, like, Garoppolo's made a couple of conference championship games and a Super Bowl. Obviously, if you don't think highly of Purdy, Purdy's made 2. Goff has been to a couple of conference championship games, and he's been to a Super Bowl. Case Keenum made it. Carson Wentz was injured, and Nick Foles made it in his place. But like, there's just been no super dominant team on the NFC, I guess, other than Philadelphia in a way, regularly making deep playoff runs.
And then Kickup comes back here, Mookie, and he goes, Mookie and Bryce, your thoughts on the Steelers game? I'm 50-50 on winning. I think they can go in and play the Steelers and play them well, especially with a revived run game that limits TJ Watt's effectiveness in a lot of ways is the run game. He's a great pass rusher, and he's a good overall player, probably one of the top edges in the game. But to the point Mookie made about Nick Bosa earlier, if you can run the ball and put these guys in a situation where they have to defend the run more than they get to just tee off and go after the pass and the quarterback, I think you put them at a disadvantage, and I think that gives Seattle a bit of an edge right now.
Yeah, that's always going to be a tricky game going East Coast, but Seattle's been so good at these 10 a.m. Pacific time kickoffs over the last several years, and it really goes back to Pete. I think that teams in general are now getting used to that. There's so much sports science and sleep science going on, and everything has just changed so much as far as information that teams have gathered now that it's like in the Mike Holmgren days, the moment that they cross the central time zone and it's not a late kickoff, chalk it up as a loss. Like that was like a regular thing for Seattle. But I'd say around 2014, 2015, it's gotten better. So I lean Seattle in that Pittsburgh game, but it's going to be a close one, I believe.
Dogzilla Monster comes in here. Always love having him in the chat. He goes, what's the NFI situation with nose tackle Hankins? Could he be activated at any time? I believe that kind of works the same as PUP, does it not, Mookie? Where they activate him, they've got a practice window with him, and then they have to make a decision?
Yeah, same thing. So he's gone after the first 4 weeks, or he can't practice. He can't do anything while he's gone for these 4 weeks. And then afterward, activate practice window. Doesn't hit that practice window, back on NFI, and you can't come back. I believe he and somebody mentioned it in Syndicate last week in the comment section. There was a video of him just filming, giving us a tour of either Seahawks headquarters.
That was from last year.
It was from last year?
It was from last year. So I went and watched his YouTube video from last year.
So he uploaded a 1-year-old video because it's actually
yes, he did. So it's a new video, but I went and watched it, and there were certain players that were popping in. I'm going, that guy's not here anymore. That guy's not here anymore. He was never on the roster in training camp. No, it was the last year, because one of the first things he says in it, and I don't know if people caught it, was talking about Artie Burns, and having Artie Burns in Seattle here is so great because of his wife and his wife hang out all the time in Seattle. It's so great having Artie here. And I was like, okay, now I know, because Artie Burns hasn't been on this roster all year. This is an older video. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Hankins. From listening to Dan Vian's show with Brady Henderson when he had him on Brady doesn't even sound that optimistic that we see Hankins this year. That it could take months before he gets, because he hasn't done anything really at all through training camp, through OTAs or nothing. So it could be a while if we ever do see Jonathan Hankins.
Yeah. It's a shame. This is one of those times where I wish Pete was still here, because then we would get a legit, or we would get some sort of context clue where we go, all right, either Hankins is back this week or back very soon, or we're going to have to actually put him in a coffin, because obviously he's been given his last rites. So I think that it's not a big deal if Hankins isn't back, because I believe that they would just activate Peely and Bohanna, and they can rotate. Like Reed's played nose and Murphy's played nose. It's just having a more natural nose tackle is the key. And I think that I would rather just see those snaps go to a younger guy.
So Amy Holmes is in here. She always checks on the chat for me, which is great, along with Ian Victor. Oh, lost it there. She goes, Micah has back issues. Yep, he does. And they don't sound like they're going to go away anytime soon for him. And it may be a part of the reason why Jerry Jones moved off of Micah Parsons. Not saying it was a brilliant move. Don't get me wrong there, but I think it's definitely a way for Jerry to maybe justify being, oh, well, we knew that this back injury was going to be a long-term issue and so on. But it's always good to see Amy in the chat here. John comes in. Always love having John in the chat. He goes, when will Mills be activated? I don't know. And I could see them, depending on how his recovery is going, Mookie, if it's not to where they want it to at the point they have to make a decision, doing the same thing they did with Darrell Taylor and just shutting him down and having his contract carry over a year and start next year.
Yeah, it'd be like a medical red shirt, but for the NFL. We're recording this at the time that Mike McDonald is having his media. So he said something interesting about the guard depth. So if something happens to the starting guards, Olu would probably be next up. So that means moving Sundell to guard, which tells you how they feel about Cable doing Richmond getting into the game. So they could be on the roster, but rather not immediately insert you into the game. And also, it looks like Jake Bobo has clear concussion protocol because he was returning punts or practicing returning punts. And ideally, he is only fair catching punts, because I don't want to see him back out there fielding punts anytime soon. And Horton's also fielding punts. So we'll see who becomes the punt returner, but ideally it's not Bobo. And also, Horton practicing is a good thing. So I think Horton's good to go.
I will say this. I think after week 1, you see Seattle sign Shane Lemieux. I think that's who their guard's going to be. It'd come in as a veteran guard, familiar with John Benton's system, played well in it last year. I think now that he's been released by the Saints, you will see them bring in Shane Lemieux. And so that way it's not a contract that tolls the entire year. They can do hey, it's after week 1. It doesn't hold. The guaranteed money doesn't hold the whole year. So John comes in with another one here, Mookie. He goes, do you think Morris will be a practice squad guy after Mills pushes him out of the lineup? If Mills makes it back this year, I don't think we'll see Morris necessarily drop from the 53 unless he obviously is not playing well. I think there could be someone else that gets dropped out. I will say this, though. I think Mills pushes Morris off next year's roster altogether. And I don't think Mike Morris is here next year if Riley Mills is healthy going into 2026.
Yeah, that's my read on it as well. I thought Morris was a bubble player, and then he had a good enough preseason to justify staying on the roster. But once Mills is healthy, I don't really see where Morris fits, because, all right, is he going to be a big edge, 5 tech guy? Can they play him at 3 tech? I mean, essentially, to me, Jared Ivey and him being on the roster kind of also is another factor as far as Morris's future, because if Mills comes back in 2026, I think that Ivey's done enough to still be on the 2026 roster, and then Morris would be the one who could end up being let go, because I think he's probably one of those good preseason players and camp players, but in terms of actual regular season effectiveness, he doesn't have any standout traits.
All right, we got Hoop Craze in here. Goes, how will Emin Wari do? Do you think he's solid but does a lot better in year 2? I don't think we'll see how do I put this? I made a statement yesterday on the 12 Talk show that I can't wait for Emin Wari to hit George Kittle so hard that George Kittle has Vernon Davis, Cam Chancellor flashbacks. But I think Emin Wari might be more impactful for the fact of what he will allow Witherspoon to not have to do all the time that he's done in the past. Emanwari being able to play in the slot and in that nickel spot there at certain points, I think seeing Witherspoon outside might give Devin the ability to actually shut down other teams' top receivers a little bit more and make more plays on the ball because Emanwari will be the blitzing factor off the edge. That's how I kind of see it. I do think in year 2 it'll be better. He'll be no longer be a rookie, so the game will slow down for him. But I do think he will be quite good this year as a rookie.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point because I believe that Emanwari is going to be a lot more down closer to the line of scrimmage as a rookie because he's not going to get bulk of the starting snaps. He's going to be more of a rotational guy, I believe, the first year for him. But those Devin Witherspoon blitzes were very ineffective in his second season. And it's not like they're going to stop doing it, but I like to see them do it less. They got so many viable blitzing options that McDonald is probably just frothing at the mouth thinking of what ideas that he can have as far as sim pressures or just different blitz packages and all that. But I think Emanwari will be fine as a rookie. He's going to make some splash plays, but I think his splash plays are going to be second level and down. I think they're going to be less deep into the secondary.
All right, and Hoop Craze comes back in here. He goes, I don't know. I think we lose week 1. Hey.
Enough. I can get you a scope or Listerine. Please, I will not accept such a statement. Yes, it could be true, but that doesn't mean you say it out loud.
All right, John comes back in. He goes 13-4, 2 playoff wins. Dan Viens agrees. That's been my statement. And I did see that Dan has actually switched over to that. I asked John in the chat if Dan gave me credit. He goes, not by name, but just said that people have changed his mind. And he goes, you and I know the truth. That is true. I have been the one that is hammering that down, and I will continue to hammer that down. And I will actually explain the reasoning behind that on my season prediction show that'll come out on Wednesday night, guys. So be tuned in for that one. It'll come out, so make sure you got the notifications clicked. And what else we got? Amy comes in with, she goes, I say 12-5, Hoop Craze. I see 11 wins and a playoff game win. So we got people in double digits. That's good. Here's a good one from John. Do you think Myers will be the kicker next year?
I don't think so. I mean, his contract is not a whole lot. And also, to me, kicker is not such a vital position for draft capital, 49ers. So you can find your Cam Little. If Cam Little in Jacksonville is any good, like he seems to be a gem if he can kick from 70 or however long he kicked in a preseason game. But yeah, I don't think Myers will be here next year. Dixon, no doubt about it. He's here to stay. But Myers is just an age thing. And if he struggles this year, then an odd year Myers returns again, then there will be no even year Myers for the Seahawks next year because they'll move on.
All right. And we go to John here with another one. He goes, we absolutely need to take back home field advantage. Could not agree more, John. Agrees comes in and goes, we're not going to lose. I think that was more to Hoop Craze's comment earlier. Big Mike comes in with, I think that's where Seattle has the best advantage, Mookie. McDonald has proven he can slow down the Shanahan and McVay offense. He has. He's done it with Baltimore, and he did it last year. Like, in that one game that we lost at home, which still drives me nuts to this day and basically decided our playoff fate, we held the Rams to basically next to nothing in the second half of that game. They didn't do anything, and we gave them the game on offense because we made some mistakes that we can't make. I think McDonald definitely has proven he can slow down that offense, and he's going to know more about it in some senses now with Kubiak there about some more of the finer and inner workings to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just a note on Jason Myers' contract, just so I can pull it up. He had a 4-year extension in 2023. He's 34 now, but his deal is up in 2026, and it's much easier to get out of it because you're saving $5 million of the cap and only taking on $1 million and a bit in dead money. But I'm not thinking about Jason Myers' future right now as much as I'm thinking about other things like Big Mike's comments. And yeah, I feel like the knowledge of the Shanahan and McVay offenses matters a lot when it comes to McDonald. Now, what can also be true is that if the Seahawks offense struggles against San Francisco on Sunday, we also have to remember that Shanahan knows this offense pretty well too, especially when Kubiak was on his staff. So he might know some of the things, and he knows Sam Darnold. He might know some of the things that can slow this offense down and get him into trouble. So just something to keep in mind there if I want to temper some expectations, even my own.
Amy comes in with, we kept CMC bottled up a bit in that second game
Mhm.
last year. Yeah, we did. And I think the thing with CMC that we have to look at is how quick and explosive is CMC. He's had a full offseason now to recover from the double Achilles injury he was dealing with last year. It'll be interesting to see what version of CMC we get to see. And the other thing too, and we didn't really touch on it, was Brian Robinson getting traded there actually helps the 49ers dramatically because I think he can run in this system. And I think he's going to be a nice spell for CMC because of their loss of Jordan Mason there in the offseason. It's going to help them actually keep CMC fresher throughout the season.
Yeah, that could be good because you have a starting level running back as your backup instead of all the backup level guys that the 49ers have been drafting, because the 49ers draft history with running backs versus what they do with undrafted guys or guys they trade for couldn't be any more different. They have just had so many busts and not good picks at running back, but McCaffrey's been the prize, and maybe Robinson will be a good trade for them as a 1-2 combo.
All right, we got John McGrath's 3 keys to victory: run the ball, stop the run, and limit Kittle.
Sounds good.
I'm all on board with that, John. And then his, I think, kind of bold prediction was Purdy will have more INTs than TDs. I'm okay with that too, John. I like the optimism you got going here. And kind of jumping back into the chat. Big Mike's got one here from you. He goes, Bryce, if you think we're going to make the NFC Championship game, will we need to not play? We would need to not play at Lambeau. It's our team's personal house of horrors. I certainly agree with you on that one, Big Mike. I do not want to have to go back to Lambeau anytime in the near future. Even in preseason, we struggle there. I will say, however, I would be interested in seeing a Seahawks team go there in a year or two when they've got this offense established in this run game and see how the Packers handle it, because it's actually an offense that can be built to play in the bad conditions. What else we got in here? Let's see. Here's one for me and Victor. He goes, remember, Kyle Hamilton didn't have a good rookie year, but had a great second and third. So I can see Nick on that trajectory. Yeah, that's a fair point.
Well, he also got more responsibility in his second year, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they kind of changed his role in the defense, and that kind of unlocked Hamilton as one of these top safeties in the league.
All right, Mookie. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there for this first edition of State of the Hawks. Is there anything you got going on over at Field Goals that's going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks here that fans should be looking out for?
Well, the staff is going to be making their win-loss predictions, Bryce included. So you'll get to read all of our thoughts as far as how far the Seahawks will go, how many wins they'll get, will they make the playoffs, and if so, how many playoff games will they win? So you'll be looking for that. There's also going to be a Google form for anybody who reads Field Goals to make their own predictions, including game by game. So let's see, we're going to track how accurate you are when the season ends. And what's already up and that you can enter up until 1 o'clock Pacific time on Sunday is a Field Goals homage pullover jacket giveaway. It's a jacket with a pullover for a rainy day. It's vintage inspired. So it's the classic Seahawks logo. And it's a really cool thing. I have a satin jacket and it's really comfortable. It's one of my favorite things to wear. The pullover jacket will be cool. So all you have to do, I will link it in the chat, is submit the Google form, predict how many rushing yards the Seahawks will have against the 49ers. Total rushing yards. Don't give me a range. If you say between 155 and 160, I'm disqualifying that entry. But if you say like 168 or 85 or 114, that's good. There are a couple of tiebreakers in there in case we have ties. And then whoever is closest or whoever is dead on accurate, you are the winner. So again, I will link that in the chat. But we got a lot of fun things coming to Field Goals over the next couple of weeks. And Bryce, you're also going to have a post game, I believe, for this too.
Yes, I will. So, guys, we will be doing a couple things upcoming here on the Hawks Eye. Clinton Bonner's interview from the Seahawkers podcast that I did earlier today will be dropping tomorrow. So make sure you guys have your notifications. It's a great conversation with me and Clinton. You guys will get to see the first 2-minute drill segment on the show. And then Wednesday dropping will be my season prediction show. So I will kind of break down how I see the Seahawks getting to 13-4. So make sure you guys are checking in for that. Friday, I will be on with Jason Aponte of the 23 Sprint Option podcast, I believe it's called, down there for the San Francisco 49ers. And we'll be previewing the San Francisco game. Saturday will be my 3 keys to victory, which is called the Seahawks Blueprint to Success. So make sure you're checking in that. And Mookie just mentioned, after every Seahawks game in the evening, I will be going live and doing a live post-game show. So maybe Mookie will join me on Sunday evening. He might be busy writing articles on the game. But either way, we'll be going live Sunday night to break down everything Seahawks. And that would lead into Monday's first Seahawks Aftermath Monday with Michael Thompson. So lots of stuff coming out, guys. Lots of content coming out. But make sure, guys, again, that you have subscribed, you are clicked into the notifications, and you like this video. Helps me with the algorithm, helps me build back my ability to get more content creators on here with reach that I can get out to everybody. So I appreciate everyone that's helped out so much in liking and subscribing to the channel. It's been great. And guys, with that being said, Mookie, let's get one in before we take off for the day. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.